I never imagined I'd find myself here, spilling my guts to strangers, but I guess life has a funny way of kicking you when you're down. You think you're living a normal life, then suddenly you're on Reddit, writing about how you just slept with your wife's best friend. Yeah, you heard that right. I slept with Megan. And no, before you jump to conclusions, it wasn't some spur-of-the-moment fling or an affair born out of passion. It was deliberate, cold, and calculated, a small piece in a much bigger story, one that starts with my wife, Emma, and my brother, Ethan. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Oh, here we go, wife cheats, guy's pissed. But trust me, this is far from your typical story. What really twisted the knife wasn't just that Emma cheated, it was who she cheated with. My own damn brother, Ethan, the golden boy, the one who always had everything handed to him on a silver platter. You can't make this kind of shit up. And honestly, I wish I was. Maybe I should start from the beginning, back when everything seemed perfect. On the surface, I had what most people would call a good life. A beautiful wife, a stable job, and what looked like a solid family foundation. We weren't rich or anything, but my parents owned a small family business, and it was doing well enough. They'd always drop hints about passing it down to us one day. You boys will take over the family business when the time's right, they'd say. Well, that didn't exactly pan out the way I expected. I can't pinpoint exactly when it started, but there was always this quiet favoritism in my family. Ethan was younger, more charming, and could do no wrong. Meanwhile, I was the one who had to fight tooth and nail for every bit of recognition. If Ethan came up with some half-baked idea, they'd call him ambitious. But when I put in the hard work, it was just expected. That's how it always was growing up. He got the better Christmas presents, more freedom, fewer rules. And when he messed up, it was shrugged off like it was no big deal. Boys will be boys, my dad would say, as if that somehow excused every idiotic thing Ethan ever did. And then came the business conversation. My parents sat me down one day, looking all serious, like they were about to drop a bomb. Alex, we've been thinking, Ethan's got a real knack for this. We're planning to hand the business over to him soon. Just like that. No discussion, no input from me, just a statement that shattered any illusion I had of being valued. I remember feeling my stomach twist, like everything I'd worked for meant absolutely nothing. They didn't even bother hiding their favoritism anymore. Ethan was the golden child, and I was just there. But I stayed quiet. What else could I do? I wasn't about to cause a scene, at least not back then. I had Emma, and I figured we'd make our own path, build our own future. I didn't need the family business, I told myself. We'd carve out something better together. But then Emma started to change. At first, I tried to ignore it. I mean, things seemed fine between us. At least I thought they were. We had our share of arguments like any couple, but nothing out of the ordinary. Then, slowly, she became distant. She'd disappear for hours, always saying she was just with friends or needed some time alone. When I'd ask her about it, she'd get defensive, like I was somehow wrong for even questioning her. And like an idiot, I let it slide. I didn't want to see what was happening. I wanted to believe everything was okay, that it was just a phase or a rough patch. Then the lies started. Small things at first. Missed calls, odd excuses, and nights out where she didn't even bother to check in. And yet, I still wanted to trust her. That's the sick part, isn't it? When you love someone, you'll do just about anything to avoid facing the truth that's staring you in the face. It wasn't until one of my best friends, Scott, pointed it out that I realized I couldn't just let it slide anymore. Scott's been my closest friend since we were kids, and he saw right through it. Man, you need to protect yourself, he told me, suggesting something that felt absolutely insane at the time: hidden cameras. I didn't want to believe it had come to that, but the thought lingered. What if she really was cheating? What if all the doubts I'd been ignoring were right in front of me the whole time? So yeah, I did it. I set up hidden cameras in our house. At first, I told myself it was just to ease my mind, to catch her in a harmless lie about being out with friends or something trivial. But what I found, it was far from innocent. The first time I watched the footage, I felt like I was watching someone else's life unfold. There she was in our home with Ethan, my own fucking brother. And it wasn't just some random hookup. It was intense, like they'd done this 100 times before. They were laughing together, whispering sweet nothings like I didn't even exist. It was like watching a train wreck, except I was the one being crushed. At that moment, something inside me just broke. I can't even describe the feeling properly. Betrayal doesn't quite cut it. Anger, sure, but it went deeper, into pure humiliation. My own wife, in my own house with my own brother. My blood. I wanted to scream. I wanted to march right up to them, throw the truth in their faces, punch Ethan's smug face, and yell at Emma until I couldn't speak. But I didn't. No, I did something much worse. I stayed silent. I let them believe they'd gotten away with it. And that's when I started plotting my revenge. After watching the footage over and over, something snapped inside me. I sat there for hours, replaying it again and again. Each time I hit play, the rage inside me grew until I could barely breathe. You hear stories about betrayal like this, but when it's your own life, your own wife, your own brother, it's suffocating. It feels like you're drowning and no one's coming to save you. The humiliation hit me like a freight train, knowing that they'd been sneaking around behind my back, using our home like it was their personal playground, as if I didn't even exist. It made me feel like a complete joke. The questions wouldn't stop swirling in my head. How long had this been going on? How many times had they done this? I wanted to smash everything in sight, burn the house to the ground, just to erase every trace of what I'd witnessed. But I knew that wouldn't be enough. I needed more than just an emotional meltdown. I needed revenge. Cold, calculated, and devastating revenge. If I acted too fast, I'd lose my chance to really destroy them. So, I waited. I let the anger simmer, allowed it to fester and grow until it consumed me. But I wasn't about to be reckless. No, I had to hit them in the most painful way possible, and that meant thinking this through. I couldn't just confront them. That's what they'd expect me to do. I had to go bigger, make sure they regretted ever betraying me. That's when Megan came to mind. Megan, Emma's best friend since college. They were practically inseparable, and if Emma ever confided in anyone, it was her. That's why I knew Megan was my key to cutting even deeper. This wasn't just about getting back at Emma. I wanted to twist the knife in ways she couldn't even imagine. I started small, just a few texts here and there, keeping it casual and friendly. I'd bring up Emma, dropping a few complaints, just to crack open the door. Megan's smart. She knew something was off between Emma and me even before I reached out, but she didn't push it first. Women always have a sense when things are wrong. Before long, I turned up the heat. A few compliments, some subtle flirting, and a bit of charm. The thing about Megan is she's not naive. She liked the attention, especially since her own relationship with her boyfriend had been on the rocks for months. Emma knew all about Megan's relationship problems, always offering her useless advice. It wasn't long before Megan started taking the bait I laid out. But I wasn't rushing. This was a slow burn. I wasn't going to just jump into bed with her. No, I needed to make her believe this was something natural, something that just had to happen. That's the secret to revenge. You don't rush it. You let it unfold slowly. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop thinking about the footage of Emma and Ethan. It was burned into my brain. I realized just confronting them wouldn't be enough. They needed to be exposed, humiliated publicly. I wanted the world to know what kind of people they really were. This wasn't just about shame. It was about stripping away everything they valued. If I leaked the video online, anonymously, of course, there'd be no coming back from that. Ethan's reputation would be shredded, and Emma? Well, we all know how the world treats women when they screw up. People forget a guy's mistakes, but women? They're branded for life. So I started looking into how I could make it happen. I dove into forums, read articles, joined discussions about leaking things without getting traced. It was risky, but if I played my cards right, they'd never know it was me. They might even blame each other, which would be a bonus. At the same time, I realized I needed to cover my tracks legally. Emma had no clue what was coming, and that gave me an advantage. I got in touch with a lawyer, keeping things vague at first. I told him I was considering a divorce and wanted to protect my assets. When I mentioned infidelity, he He didn't even flinch. It was clear he'd heard this story before. "I want to freeze our accounts," I told him. "I don't want her touching a single cent when this all blows up." He raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. "We can do that, but it'll take a bit of time. You'll need solid proof of the affair, though. Hearsay won't cut it." "Proof?" "Oh, I had more than enough. I'll get you everything you need." We went over the details: how to protect my personal assets, how to keep Emma from accessing our joint accounts. The lawyer was smart, and he knew exactly how to set things up so she wouldn't see this coming. The hardest part? Acting like everything was normal. I had to pretend like nothing was wrong, like I wasn't already miles ahead of her. Every time I saw her, I felt disgusted. She'd flash me that fake smile, the same one she probably gave Ethan after their little sessions, as if everything was just fine. And I'd smile right back, while silently planning to tear her entire world apart. Meanwhile, things with Megan were heating up. I could feel her eyes on me when Emma wasn't paying attention. It was only a matter of time before I made my move. But I wasn't going to just sleep with her for the sake of it. I needed to make sure Emma found out. She had to feel that same gut-wrenching betrayal I felt. Everything was starting to fall into place. The pieces of my revenge were lining up perfectly, and I knew the fallout would be spectacular. The first rule of revenge? Patience. You got to lay the groundwork, make them feel secure, make them believe everything is normal, even their idea. That's what I needed to do with Emma. I couldn't just charge in, guns blazing, accusing her of sleeping with Ethan. She'd deny it, or worse, get defensive and push me even further away. No, I had to play this smart. One night, after dinner, I decided to plant the first seed. We were sitting on the couch, and I acted like something was bothering me. Emma, being Emma, didn't notice at first. She was glued to her phone, probably texting Ethan or Megan. It didn't really matter. I had to get her attention. "So, I've been thinking," I said, leaning back and making sure I sounded calm. "About us. About relationships in general." She glanced up from her phone, mildly curious but not really concerned. "What do you mean?" she asked, barely paying attention. I paused deliberately, letting the moment hang like I was unsure of how to phrase it. "You know, marriage can be tricky, right? People change, their needs shift. I've been reading up on how some couples manage to keep things exciting by being a little more open." Her reaction was instant. A mix of confusion and suspicion flickered across her face. "Open? What are you talking about? Like an open marriage?" I gave a casual shrug, playing it off like I hadn't been anticipating this conversation. "Not exactly, but yes, something along those lines. I mean, different people have different ways of keeping things interesting. I just figured maybe it's worth a discussion." She laughed, but it wasn't her usual, genuine laugh. No, this was that awkward, nervous laugh she did when she wasn't sure how to handle a situation. "Wait, are you serious? Look, I'm not suggesting we dive into anything crazy. I just think it's something people go through, especially after being together for a while. Let's be honest, people get bored, start looking elsewhere, even if they won't admit it." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought she'd call me out right then and there. But I kept it cool, gave her space to process what I'd said. It was the perfect setup. Let her believe I was considering other options, so she wouldn't even suspect I already knew about her affair with my brother. She had no clue she was being played. Not yet. "I don't know, Alex. That sounds insane. I mean, I've never even thought about something like that," she replied, shaking her head, but there was a slight hesitation in her voice. "Exactly what I was counting on. I get it," I said, backing off just enough. "It's not for everyone. But we're adults, right? We should be able to talk about things like this without freaking out. It's just a conversation." That's where I left it for the night. I didn't push further, but the seed was planted. I knew it would gnaw at her, work its way into her thoughts. She was already cheating, so the idea of an open relationship wasn't completely foreign to her. All I had to do was make her think I was open to it too, like I was the one inviting the idea. It didn't take long before she brought it up again. Just a few days later, she casually mentioned Megan out of the blue. "I was talking to Megan earlier. You know, about that thing you mentioned." I played dumb. What thing? The open relationship thing. She thought it was kind of interesting. Apparently, a lot of couples are doing it these days. Bingo. I knew Emma couldn't resist telling Megan about it. And Megan, the very person I'd been subtly working on behind the scenes, was falling right into place without even realizing it. Oh, did she? I asked, pretending to be surprised. What did she say? Emma shrugged, but I could see the curiosity in her eyes. Maybe even a hint of intrigue. She didn't seem weirded out by it. I don't know, she said it works for some couples. I chuckled lightly. Guess people are more open-minded than we thought. The game was officially on. Emma didn't even realize that by bringing Megan into this, she was giving me exactly what I needed. Megan was now in the mix, though she didn't know the full extent of it yet. Over the next couple of weeks, things with Megan heated up. I started texting her more frequently, adding compliments and playful banter whenever Emma wasn't around. Megan ate it up. She loved attention, and with her own relationship on shaky ground, I was the perfect distraction. We began meeting up for coffee, under the pretense of catching up or discussing things. Emma didn't think anything of it. After all, Megan was her best friend. She trusted her completely. What she didn't realize was that Megan had her own desires, and I was just fanning the flames. Eventually, I brought up the whole open relationship idea with Megan. I made it sound like Emma was all for it, even though she hadn't fully agreed. You know, Emma and I have been thinking about trying new things, being more open, I said one evening when Megan and I were alone. I watched her carefully, looking for any sign of hesitation. But instead, she seemed intrigued. Oh, really? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, it's new for us, but it seems like something worth exploring. Emma's open to it, and I think it could be interesting. That was all Megan needed to hear. She took it as permission, a green light to take things further. At first, we kept it light, flirty conversations, harmless touches. But with each passing day, the tension between us grew, thickening with anticipation. We both knew where this was headed. And the best part? Emma had no idea. She didn't know I was already weaving her best friend into my web of revenge. Then, after weeks of carefully playing this game, the inevitable finally happened. I crossed the line with Megan. It was a Saturday night, and Emma was out, probably with Ethan, pretending it was another girls' night or whatever bullshit excuse she came up with. I didn't care. I had my own plans. Megan came over that night, supposedly just for a drink and to talk. But let's be real, we both knew exactly what was about to go down. The tension was so thick the second she stepped through the door that we didn't even need to speak about it. It was just a matter of time before one of us made the first move. We sat on the couch, sipping wine, keeping the conversation light. I flirted, touched her arm every now and then, watching how she responded. It was clear from the way she looked at me that she had been waiting for this moment just as much as I had. She leaned in close, practically begging me to make the next move. And when I finally did, it felt like everything was falling perfectly into place. I leaned forward, brushing her hair back and letting my fingers trace down the side of her neck. She didn't pull away, didn't hesitate for a second. Her lips parted slightly, giving me all the invitation I needed. When our mouths met, it was pure heat from the start. I kissed her hard, pushing her back onto the couch, my hands roaming her body while she let out these soft moans, fully surrendering to the moment. But for me, it wasn't just about Megan. It was about the bigger picture. Every kiss, every touch was just another step closer to the revenge I'd been meticulously planning. We didn't even make it to the bedroom. There was no need. Clothes came off, and soon we were tangled up on the couch, with the wine glass tipping over. But neither of us cared. This wasn't about the physical act itself. It was about the power, the control. I knew I was taking something that belonged to Emma, something she would never see coming. And as for Megan, she had no idea she was just a pawn in this twisted game. She thought this was real, something meaningful, but for me, it was simply another calculated move. Afterward, as Megan lay beside me, catching her breath, I felt a surge of triumph. It wasn't even about her in that moment. It was all about Emma. The thought of how this would utterly wreck her was almost too good to be true. The fact that I had just slept with her best friend, right on her nose, and she had no clue, it was perfect. And the best part was, Emma had practically handed me the green light by entertaining the whole open relationship idea. She thought she was in control, thought she had me fooled. Megan fell asleep, but my mind was already racing ahead to the next phase of my plan. Sleeping with her was just one step. Now it was time for the real damage. The footage. I had been sitting on it for weeks, waiting for the right moment to detonate the bomb. The video of Emma and Ethan in our bed was like a loaded weapon, and it was finally time to pull the trigger. I'd already done my homework. How to leak the video anonymously, how to make sure it couldn't be traced back to me. It was shockingly easy. People leak videos online all the time, and as long as you're careful, no one ever finds out who did it. And I wasn't about to make any mistakes. I uploaded the video to a few key sites, posting it in places where it would spread like wildfire. I didn't include names, no identifying details, just the footage. The video itself was enough to tell the whole story. I knew it would go viral. It was just a matter of time before people started sharing it, ripping into them, tearing them apart. When I hit submit on the last site, I leaned back in my chair, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't sure what I expected to feel. Maybe relief, maybe satisfaction, but what I felt instead was a strange mixture of anticipation and anger. I was waiting for the storm to hit, and once that video made its rounds, there would be no coming back from it. Ethan and Emma's reputations? Destroyed. There was no way they'd ever recover from this. And that was exactly what I wanted. The next few days were a whirlwind. I kept checking the sites, watching as the video started to gain traction. The comments began flooding in, people calling out Emma and Ethan for what they were, cheaters, liars, scum. They didn't know their names, but they didn't need to. The video spoke for itself. At home, things were shifting. Emma noticed it too. She wasn't completely clueless, at least not about that. She could sense the change in my attitude, the way I'd stopped caring, the way I didn't get upset anymore when she went out. I could see it in her eyes. She was starting to get nervous. She couldn't figure out what had changed. One night at dinner, she finally spoke up. "You've been acting strange lately," she said, her eyes searching mine. "Is something going on?" I shrugged it off, giving her a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Just busy with work." "Why? Is something bothering you?" She blinked, thrown off by my response. "No, I don't know, you seem different." I gave another casual shrug. Maybe I'm just starting to see things a little clearer. That made her uncomfortable, I could tell. She didn't like the way I was acting, but she didn't push. She was too wrapped up in her own secrets, too worried I might figure out what she was doing with Ethan. But what she didn't know was that I already knew everything. I was just biding my time, waiting for the perfect moment to throw it all back in her face. And as for Megan, she didn't have a clue. She thought we were sharing some exciting, forbidden secret, never realizing she was just a pawn in my game. Everything was falling into place perfectly, and the best part was none of them saw it coming. It was time. I'd waited long enough. The video had done its damage, and the tension in the house was suffocating. Emma was completely unaware of what was about to hit her, which was exactly how I wanted it. For weeks, I played the role of the distant, distracted husband, too preoccupied with work to notice her dirty little secrets. But I was on the brink of tearing her world apart, and she didn't have the faintest idea. One night after dinner, I decided it was time to drop the hammer. I'd been biding my time, waiting for the perfect moment, and I could tell Emma was on edge, sensing that something was off. She tried to keep things light, as if she could smooth over whatever she thought was brewing, but she was way too late for that. "We need to talk," I said, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. She set her fork down, her brow furrowing with concern. "What's going on?" I leaned back, crossing my arms, making sure I looked as calm as I felt. "I want a divorce." The words hung in the air, and I watched as her face twisted from confusion to shock. Her mouth opened and closed, like she was struggling to process what I had just said. "What?" She finally sputtered, her voice shaky. "Where is this coming from?" Alex, what are you even talking about? I almost laughed at how clueless she was, acting like she had no idea where this was coming from, as if she hadn't been sneaking around with my brother for who knows how long, lying to my face every damn day. I'm done, Emma. This marriage? It's over. She shook her head, panic flickering in her eyes. No, this doesn't make any sense. We can talk about this, Alex. What's wrong? Why are you saying this? We've been through rough patches before. We can work through it, right? I stared her down, unwavering. There's nothing to work through. It's over. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Her face went pale, and she blinked in disbelief. A lawyer? Why would you go to a lawyer without talking to me first? Because there's nothing to talk about, Emma. You don't get a second chance to fix this. I watched as desperation crept into her eyes. She was scrambling, trying to make sense of it, trying to find a way out. But I wasn't letting her spin her lies this time. I wasn't going to sit there while she tried to act confused or innocent. I was done listening to her crap. I've already cut you off from all our accounts. I continued, watching her reaction closely. You can't touch the money. No credit cards, no savings. Everything's locked down, and I've frozen the assets. You're on your own now. Her eyes widened, and her expression shifted from panic to fury. You did what? Alex, you can't just freeze our assets. I need access to that money. What the hell am I supposed to do? I shrugged, letting the weight of her realization sink in. That's your problem now. You got nothing. No access to any of it. The realization hit her hard. She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man sitting across from her, like I had suddenly become a stranger. But the truth was, I'd been this way all along. She just never bothered to notice. Alex, please, she begged, her voice cracking. This doesn't make sense. We can fix this. Just talk to me. Let me. I cut her off, leaning forward, locking my eyes onto hers. You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about rough patches. I know, Emma. Her face went white. You know what? I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. I know about you and Ethan. I've known for weeks. So don't even bother trying to lie to me. Her mouth dropped open, her eyes widening in sheer panic. No, Alex, it's not. It's not what you think. Oh, it's exactly what I think, I said, my voice cold and sharp. I've seen the footage. She froze. What footage? The footage of you and Ethan screwing each other in our bed, I said, watching as the color drained from her face. You didn't think I'd find out, did you? But I did. And I've been watching you both for a while now. I know everything. She stared at me in stunned silence, her face contorted with disbelief and horror. I could practically see the gears turning in her head as she tried to figure out a way out of this mess. But it was too late. She was cornered, and she knew it. Alex, she stammered, tears welling up in her eyes. Save it. I snapped, cutting her off again. I'm not interested in your excuses. I've already filed for divorce, and I've made sure you won't get a single dime. She tried to speak, tried to find the words, but nothing came out. She looked defeated, utterly broken. And for a fleeting moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the lies, the betrayal, the video of her with Ethan, and any trace of sympathy vanished. And just so you know, I added, leaning back in my chair, my voice calm, I didn't just sit around waiting for you to ruin everything. I took matters into my own hands. Her tear-filled eyes flickered with confusion and fear. What are you talking about? I let the silence stretch out, savoring the moment before delivering the final blow. I slept with Megan. Her face twisted in shock, pure disbelief written all over it. What? You heard me, I said, my voice dripping with satisfaction. Your best friend. We've been sleeping together. And the best part? She thinks it's all fine because you told her you were in open relationships. She gasped, her hands flying up to cover her mouth as the reality of my words sunk in. Her world was crumbling around her, and she couldn't do a damn thing to stop it. You're a monster, she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotions. I smiled, feeling the power shift completely in my favor. Maybe I am, but you're the one who created me." Emma broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. There was nothing left for her to say. The truth was out in the open. Her betrayal was laid bare, her assets frozen, and she had nothing left. No redemption, no way to fix it. It was over. The divorce proceedings moved faster than I expected. Once everything was exposed, Emma didn't even have the energy to put up a fight. The video had done its job, wrecking her reputation beyond repair. Ethan tried to stay out of it, but his own life was unraveling. He lost his job, was banned from every family gathering, and even our parents, finally seeing him for the entitled asshole he really was, cut him off. As for Emma, she was a wreck. Every time we met in court, she looked like a shadow of the woman I once knew, tired, worn down, and completely defeated. Good. I didn't feel an ounce of guilt. She brought this on herself. The divorce was finalized without a hitch, thanks to my lawyer. I got everything I wanted: the house, the car, control of our assets. Emma? She walked away with practically nothing, knowing she'd never get a cent from me again. But once the dust settled, I found myself alone in that big house. The place that used to be our home, the one where we had built a life together. It didn't feel like a victory, more like the end of something. Sure, I'd won. I'd stripped her of everything, leaving her with nothing. But as I stood there, staring at the empty rooms, I realized something. Revenge had consumed me. Every decision I made, every action I took, had been driven by my need to get back at her. And now, I didn't know what to do next. The truth is, I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. There was no big moment of closure, no rush of triumph. Just emptiness. Emma was gone, the marriage was over, and I was free. But now what? I had no clue. I threw myself into work for a while, burying myself in projects, focusing on my career. It was the only thing that made sense. Without the marriage weighing me down, I had more time to pour into my job, and I started climbing the ranks quickly. It felt good to finally be in control of something again. My boss noticed, giving me more responsibilities, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was accomplishing something for myself. Not for Emma, not for us, just for me. As for Megan, well, things with her didn't last. We kept in touch for a bit after everything blew up. She'd text me now and then, and we'd meet up occasionally. But the thrill of our affair faded fast. Once my revenge was complete, there was no point in keeping things going with her. The sex had been fun, sure, but that's all. It was part of the plan. I wasn't in love with Megan, and I never had been. She was just another piece of the puzzle. Eventually, the texts became less frequent, and before long, we stopped talking altogether. She moved on, found someone new, and I didn't mind. We were never meant to last. I didn't need her anymore, and dragging her into the mess that was left of my emotional state wasn't something I wanted to do. With the divorce finalized, I had a lot of time to think about what came next. Starting over sounded simple enough, but it wasn't as easy as flipping a switch and moving on. I'd spent years of my life with Emma, and despite everything, it left its mark. You don't walk away from that kind of betrayal without carrying some scars. But I knew I couldn't stay stuck in that place forever. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much resentment, anger, and bitterness I'd been holding on to. And now, with it all behind me, it was time to let go. I aimed to start living for myself again. I started going out more, meeting new people, making connections that had nothing to do with my past. At first, it felt strange, like I was relearning how to be me again. But gradually, I found my footing. New friends, new experiences. I even started dating, though I took it slow. No drama, no betrayals. I wasn't looking for anything serious, just enjoying life without the weight of my marriage dragging me down. The last conversation I had with Emma was through our lawyers. By then, there wasn't much left to say. She didn't even look at me during the final court session, and that was fine by me. What could she possibly say? No apology would ever undo what she'd done. There was no fixing the damage. It was better this way, clean, final, with no loose ends. But as I walked out of that courtroom, I realized something. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't feel anything for her, really. She was just someone I used to know, someone who had hurt me deeply, but no longer had any power over me. And that was the real victory. The last time I saw Ethan was at our parents' house. They'd invited me over to talk about the business, wanting to mend fences after everything that had happened. Ethan wasn't there. Apparently, they'd cut him off completely, and honestly, I didn't care. He made his choices, and I made mine. We were done. Walking away from all that family drama, from Emma, from everything, it felt like shedding old skin. The revenge, the anger, it had served its purpose. But now it was time for something new, something better. So I left that chapter of my life behind. There was no need to look back. I had everything I needed in front of me: freedom, control, and a future that was finally mine to shape. As I walked down the street, leaving my old life behind, I felt lighter than I had in years. The air was clearer, and the path ahead felt wide open. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about starting over. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready.